Good morning guys and welcome back to another episode of Rift Amps. Right, Vibro Champ. Let's open it up and have a look inside. And see what we can't find. So it's just the 4 screws for the upper panel. (1967) Fender black plate Vibro Champ on the test bench. So it's coming for a 3-prong conversion, which I've done, and service as required. So I've gone through the amplifier and I've done what I consider to be a good combination of preventative maintenance and good things that need to be done to vintage amplifiers to keep them going. So I've replaced all of the electrolytic capacitors on the board. They were all well out of tolerance and leaky electrically, so they've gone with appropriate replacements fitted. The original 470 ohm cathode bias resistor had drifted up in value to 525 ohms, and even with it running at a higher value, which was drifted up, the bias was far too hot. So I've gone up to the next E12 value, which is 680 ohms, and that's brought the bias down to almost just above 100% anode and screen combined. So that's a perfect place for it. The amplifier running on the test bench is putting out just under 5 watts, so we'll call that good. And here's the tremolo, working great. Now, we did have a conversation with the customer about possibly slowing the tremolo down, but as I mentioned in last week's video, he's also got the silver plate Vibro Champ, this one here. So we're going to try it on that one first to see how it sounds before we mod the black plate one. But apart from that, we're all good. The other things I did was it's still running the original valves. And as you know, Vibro Champs don't have grid and screen stoppers on the 6v6, so I've added some Allen Bradley carbon comps there just to help the operating conditions of that valve, keep everything in check, especially when it's overdriving. The amp is getting old now. We want to try and keep it going for as long as possible, and that's a good reliability mod to do that is appropriate for this style of amplifier. So yeah, that's the Vibro Champ running. We'll leave it burning in, give it a couple of hours, and if it's all okay, we can load it back into the cabinet and we can call that one complete. Right, I'm on to the silver plate Vibro Champ. I've just taken the back panel off and pulled the speaker cable plug out of the chassis, and I don't know if you can tell, but the ground wire is literally hanging by one thread, strand, whatever you want to call it. That's something to fix. That's no good. What else can we see? Well, I can see some discoloration on this. Oh, look. That's not in there very tight, is it? Interesting. Some discoloration on the valve there. 5x3 looks to be okay. It's got the original can capacitor. And what looks like some Russian or Soviet made preamp valves. Right, let's get the chassis out. Right, first impressions. It's had some work done before. Right. That electrolytic cap does not look healthy. Nor does that one. That one's been swapped out. That one's original. Just like the other amp, no screen or grid stoppers on the 6v6. It's had other work done, which in the standard isn't too bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. Okay, interesting. Compared to the black plate one, you can tell there's a significant difference in the build quality, materials and standard. But we'll see. We'll see how it gets on. So, transformers. 30th week, 1969 possibly. 12th week, 71. That doesn't make sense, does it? We need to do some research. But yes, all in all though, it's still quite a nice silver plate Vibro champ. There's nothing awful about it, just I know it's had work before, but it does need just a little bit of TLC, so let's get on and do that. Okay, so I've just resoldered the the common on the speaker plug, but just having a look at the clearly aftermarket spade terminals, the positive one is also hanging on by a single strand. Now, I don't look, there you go, it's just come off. Useless. How long was that going to last in the amp? So I'm going to, I don't like spade terminals, especially on things like this, so we'll remove that, we'll solder that on permanently, and then we know that's good. Okay then, PR6. I don't know if you've been watching videos recently, you know I built this. We'll finish this off almost about a month ago, and I was just waiting for the faceplates to arrive. Well, they did, and I hold my hands up, I made a mistake. I forgot that, well, I forgot to specify, sorry, that the front plate should have a mid control. So you can see we're missing one knob one control on the front plate, which is no good. Unfortunately, the chap who makes my faceplates went on holiday. So I couldn't reorder the faceplate until he got back, and when he did, he was out of the material, so we couldn't even get a new faceplate made up for a long time. So this is all my fault. But thankfully, the correct plate has now arrived with the mid control on it. So that's going to go on like so. Now this is actually good news, because it means I can get this amplifier completed and the customer can finally have it. So job today is to get the faceplates on. The cabinet's all prepped and ready to go, so I can get that assembled and we give it a final play test, give it a go through, make sure I'm happy with everything, and then we can sign this amplifier off. Looking good. So let's crack on and do that. Done and dusted. All sorted, all loaded in the cabinet, all ready to go. All ready. Super happy with this one. Annoyed that it took so long to get everything finished in the end, but beautiful grey tweed cabinet. Chunky old leather handle. Cream knobs. On the brown plate style dials, but it's a black plate itself. Oxblood with gold stripe cloth and a Celestion A-type speaker. One PR6, done. Okay, silver plate Vibro Champ. Two things. First of all, it is a 1981, not a 71. It's an 81. It's a much later amp. Very interesting. Anyway, I've gone through, given it a service, similar to what I did on the black plate one. A couple of electrolytics needed replacing. Added screen and grip stoppers to the 6v6 to help that go. This one needed a 1K cathode bias resistor to get everything in spec. Now, this is an export model, so it's got a voltage selector on the back. Now, UK mains voltage officially is 230, but actually what comes out the wall is 240. In fact, today my mains voltage is, my line voltage is 243. Can we see that? 242.9, 243 volts coming out the wall. Now, do we select the 240 volt tap or the 260? Because the rule used to be you measured your line voltage and you selected whichever one was above that, and that's where you'd always ensure everything was in spec. So what I've done is I've taken bias readings, I've done my bias calculations on both of those taps, and we can decide together what we think is the best for it. So, our line voltage, when I did the measurement, was at 242 volts. So with the voltage selector at 240 volts, our anode to cathode voltage was 400 volts exactly. Our cathode voltage across the resistor was 32.6 volts, and the actual measurement of that resistor was 985 ohms. That gives us a cathode current of 33 milliamps which gives us, if we times that by our anode to cathode voltage, gives us a wattage of 13.24 watts, and which is 100. So it's biased at 110%, which is where we ended up on the black plate amp. Now, with the voltage selector set to 260 volts, our anode to cathode voltage comes down to 368 volts. Our voltage across the cathode resistor comes down to 29.5 volts, giving us a cathode current of 30 milliamps, so just 3 less. But because the voltage is much lower, we're now at 11 watts or 91.8% of max. So we're below 100%. So this one is a kinder operating condition than this one. So which one do we choose? Well, on paper we'd go for this, wouldn't we? Now, if we go over to the oscilloscope, as usual, I'm injecting a 1 kilohertz 150 millivolt sine wave into the front of the amp. Treble and bass are on 0. We're into the high input. I'm currently set to on my 260 volt tap, and here's my sine wave, and we'll increase it until the bottom peak starts to square off and back it down, and we're putting out 4.16 volts RMS, which puts us into 4 ohms, about 4.5 watts. If I change my voltage selector to 240 volts, the sine wave pretty much stays the same. I can go back. That's 260. That's 240. We get a little bit more output, closer to 4.6, 4.8 watts. So, is that going to be noticeable? No, it's not. As you play the amp, you're not going to hear the difference. But everything is running cooler on the 260 volt setting. Everything's fine. Everything's running great. Can't complain. So I think I can confidently now I've measured everything, say to the customer, you can run this on either setting, but if you're not sure for safety, you can go 260. The amp's fine. Now, the other thing I've done is I've changed in the tremolo circuit. There's usually a 22 nanofarad and then a 10 nanofarad and a 10 nanofarad. What you can do is change the two 10s for 22s, so you've got 22, 22, 22, and that slows your minimum tremolo speed down. So I'll show you. That's a lot slower now, but also it slows down the top speed, so you shift everything down. So we've got a nice, more usable range of tremolo, rather than that super fast scattergun effect, but nothing lower down. But sorry, still too fast lower down. So yeah, quite happy with that. So just like before, we'll leave this one burning in for a bit, make sure it's happy. Monitor the wall voltage, make sure it doesn't fluctuate too much, and I'll come back, retake the measurements, make sure I'm happy with everything, and if so, we can button it back up into the cabinet and the customer can have it back. Oh dear, bad news. Just giving the Silver Plate 81 Vibro a play test, and noticed some awful speaker distortion and noise. And as you can see, hopefully it's clear, the speaker, that's a hole right there, you see? That speaker is gone. Now, that's unfortunate, so we're going to have to talk to the customer about that, see what he wants to do. But just thought I'd quickly show you how slow the tremolo now goes. So just bear with me. So here's the amp. Ignore the speaker distortion. So speed on 1, so it's slowest setting, intensity on full, this is how slow it is. Super slow, yeah, all the way at the other end. This is as fast as it goes. So it's still got a nice fast speed to it, but now we can go super slow. So yeah, so that's what's possible just by changing 2 capacitors in the tremolo circuit on a Vibro champ. So I've got to call the customer about the speaker, but apart from that, the amp's pretty much done. So the customer gave me the go-ahead to swap out the speaker. I had in stock a used second-hand WGS G8C 4-ohm speaker. So I've just swapped the cable over, pulled the old one out, and we can get a closer look at the damage. You can see that's, and it's right on the vibration line there, so that's just worn out. Nothing's happened to that. That's just where she's gone. Unfortunately, it's continued up here, but never mind. That's the code on the speaker. Now, some people have a different opinion to me, but my opinion is there's no point in reconing this, because there's still more value in this to a collector, complete with the amp, with the original cone and a good replacement speaker, than there is having that reconed and back in the amp. But of course it depends what the customer ultimately wants to do, but that's what I recommend, is to keep that somewhere safe in a box that can be sold with the amp in the future should it need to be, and you're running a nice, good, high quality modern replacement in the meantime. So yeah, we'll do that. Let's get the amp back together and then play test it. Slow tremolo, and at the other end of the scale So all done then. All ready for the customer to collect. Speakers going back to him. There's his bag of components that we swapped out. They can keep those with the amp. I know some of you will ask, because it's the internet, but what happened, you're going to want to know what happened to the heater voltage when I switched between the two mains inputs on the back. Well, it only dropped by 1/10 of a volt, so it went from 6.3 down to 6.2 volts, so hardly anything at all, but the amp runs much cooler. So I'm really confident that I can say to the customer, you can run this amp on 240 or 260 without any issues. But there you go. Right, actually, while I think about it, just give me one last check of the 67 Vibro champ. Looks good, right? He'll be here in a couple of hours, so I can go out the front, all ready for collection. So with vintage amplifiers, I always make sure that they get their replacement parts back. So on the 67, obviously we did the 3-prong conversion. So that's his old mains cable, and there's the parts he replaced, including the death cap which came out. So yeah, he gets all that back, copy of his invoice as well, and those two Vibro champs are ready to go. Well, once again guys, we are done. Thank you so much for watching. As I ask every time, please give this video a thumbs up, leave a comment down below if you've got anything you'd like to say, any questions you'd like me to answer, please do. Hit the subscribe button, and I shall see you all at the next one.